So we've got some fabulous different landscapes from around the world. I think I'm going to have a go at this one. I think this is probably one of the more challenging ones to do. Um, and I thought that's why I do it actually, just so we'd have a really good go at it. But don't get too caught up or too worried about like the exact angles. What I did do though, which made it much more easy today for a lot of people, was just divide my page into sections, into quarters. And again, you don't even have to do this. If that, like, you think, oh, it's just there's just too much going on to do that, that's fine. Don't do it. It just sometimes helps. I'm going to take my middle mark. Now, the only other thing you need to think about with this, if you're doing a grid like this, the only thing you might need to think about is if you're this is an A size picture. If you've got anything that's like wider than an A size board, you might just need to kind of measure off the edges and make the centre bit a bit more A4, because what will happen is if you try and stretch this, excuse me, over say a 9 by 12 or something like that, which is much more squat, you end up stretching out the building into a bit of a different position. Excuse me. So like this, I've just marked off the end, so it's going to be a better fit really. That's a little tip there. Oh no, I've got hiccups. Right. So I have done this on the board, just nice and lightly though, because you'll want to be able to kind of use some nice light colours. So you can start if you want to by mapping that out in getting your background in first. I didn't bother this morning because I just thought, well, I'm just going to bring it into the edge of my painting. I'm not too worried about that because it's quite a big shape here. So I think one of the things that's quite helpful to do is, like I was saying, if you use your halfway mark here, we can see that we've pretty much got these two triangles on here. And then everything else kind of fits between it. And I think that's probably where I'm going to start. But to do that, you need to be able to do it, don't you? So what you'll find is because the picture is taken looking upwards, some of the angles are a little bit unusual, and that's fine. It's good practice to do houses at all different angles, not just face on or down the street. It's good to look up at sometimes. So we've got this centre line here, and you can see that this bit just tilts ever so slightly there. But oh, they're just magnificent, aren't they? They're so pretty and unusual, these. So what I'm going to do is work out whereabouts kind of like maybe not where the spike is on there or the sculpture, but where at the top of that it comes to. And I'm looking at this on here, and that's not even thinking about going below. This is just the top section. I'm thinking about it's just a bit over halfway is where I think it's going to go. And then I'm just going to put markings in rather than try and draw them straight out. But I mean, you're more than welcome to do that, to draw them straight out if you want to. But I'm looking again at this. So when we're looking at whether an angle, it's really helpful to kind of get as if I've got the paint picture straight. There we go. To use your ruler straight across and try and decide, does it lean slightly? And yes, it does. So there's a slight lean on both of those. So I'm going to have a look at how far I think this comes down to, and this one. So I've got my top marker in, then I'm going to come down to the next biggest shape, because sometimes if you start and you get this one not quite right, it's more difficult because you've got to fit it in. So I like to start with one of the biggest shapes really. So I'm just going to pop where I think this kind of comes to the side of where this top corner is here. Where I think it is. And again, we can adjust it. So whenever we start to put the paint on, we can just adjust it as we go. So I'm really not getting too bogged down with that. I am going to pop where I think this quarter comes out to, and it doesn't come as quite as far. I did it a bit too far this morning, but again, it doesn't really matter. And then here, this is like nearly 2/3 long, isn't it? There we go. And then all I'm going to do is kind of, these have got a slight curve down. If you put your ruler on that, it does kind of, there's a bit of it almost looks like a bit of an ellipsis, isn't it? It's just a very small one. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to pop that there. I'm going to bring that in ever so slightly. And then the same at this side. So I'm just going to look, you know, what does it look like when it's straight? So yeah, we've got the same kind of little curve, haven't we, behind on the front of the eaves here. So if I do that again, then it means I can just bring it in ever so slightly with a bit of a curve. But then behind it, it's much more straight, look, it's surprising. So this is why all the time, we just need to just kind of do a little bit of fact checking just to see what's actually going on, because it's really, it can be a bit disorientating. Because it looks curved, but it's actually, it's straighter. And then we've got the, you know, all these little blue lines and things like that. I'm not worrying too much, but again, that one comes up. So I'm just going to bring that on a slight curve. I'm not going to put too much detail in. I've just got a few details like these little, you know, the little blue sections of the roof, the light blue sections of the roof, just to help out a little bit. And then I'm just going to put some kind of a shape on there. Mine doesn't look really as much in detail as the sculpture on it, because I just want a sense that I'm capturing that on there. But then once you've got that bottom section in, then we can get the bottom section of the house in and then stack the next bits up, which makes it a little bit easier than trying to get everything in. So I'm looking at how far this comes out to the side, and again we can just kind of look, you know, proportionally. That has a bit of a longer ridge on the roof there that comes out further, doesn't it? And it comes back a bit. But this bit that's coming out, and again, if I was to put my ruler across there straight, you can see that there's a tilt down there. So just look at where I think it comes to. Comes just pokes out there. And I'm having this tilt kind of coming up. And also again, it kind of does the same. It's got that lovely curve on it, the same as this side. And then all I'm going to do there is just look at, you know, does it come down straight? So it does a little bit and then it kind of goes back. But again, you know, as long as we've got some kind of a shape, we can't see really in detail too much about that. Got a little bit there. And then we've got this eave that kind of comes up like we were saying. And then what happens to it then? So these are the bits we need to kind of ask the questions on. We know poking behind this edge is just the corner of this house and a little window there. And that does seem to come down quite straight. So those walls, apart from that one that's like, I think this one's a bit different because it goes up and then out. So it looks like it's leaning funny, but actually each of those sections comes out a bit further. It's like the windows overhang. So at the moment, I've got that little corner of the window in. I've got this little edge here that's sticking out, and then I want to get that angle in there, which comes down below here, doesn't it? Somewhere into the trees there, and we can't really see what's happening. So again, it's just like what we need to do is just check that we've got a similar angle on. So you can just literally take it from there, or a pencil, it doesn't even have to be a ruler, and just check it. Now I know now I need to move the eave that I've done is too far there. Looks a lot, it's a lot steeper, isn't it, than we think it is. That's the interesting thing with this. And sometimes obviously when we scale up, that lean is more obvious actually than a very small one. But that's fine. That's what it's all about, is kind of thinking, oh, what's going on here? So I'm just going to bring the edge of this house down here. This building is not a house, but it's a beautiful building. Down here. So I know that there's the edge of the building there, and then just kind of there, we can't really see too much. Again, we can see a bit of roof that looks like it's going that way, but I'm not sure. And we don't have to put a lot of detail in under there anyway. We get a sense that there's a window somewhere here, but again, we can't see it below the foliage. We can only see a few colours, and that's all we've put in underneath. I'm going to get the rest of this building in here. So we've got this bit that comes back towards the house on an angle. And then again, we know this wall, if we check it, it's fairly straight. So we can just bring that down like that. And then again, if we were to draw right across behind it, which I think, you know, is quite a handy thing to do, we would just go all the way across, wouldn't we, like that, which I suppose it makes us be able to kind of work out then where we're going to put this triangle here. And then we've got this lovely little area, this roof, this sliding roof that's like coming down here with it's got like a ridge as well, but it is pretty much coming off, isn't it, straight to the side there. And again, if you follow that angle, it's even shorter. That's where that bit of the roof is. And again, we can kind of see, we know it's going to do that, don't we? It's going to follow that. But again, we can't see it under the tree, so not to worry about it. Just going to pop in the bottom bit. So we're starting to get there. We're starting to get there with some of these shapes. We can see that building going off like that, and we can see it coming over the side. And then if we put this bottom section in as well, again, if you're not sure where to start it, just move something straight. It could just be a pencil or a paintbrush. You've got, you know, the top one, we haven't done that one yet, but the middle one, and then the other one is moving over. It's almost just under this, you know, the edge of where these windows will go, isn't it? So we can imagine putting the windows kind of in the middle there. And then we've got this at the side, and it's just poking above this line, isn't it? I'm moving that to the side, okay, some kind of thing in. I'm not putting masses of detail, I'm just kind of getting some of those really helpful, you know, structure of the building in. And again here, you know, if we look at the angle of it, it comes all the way down underneath there, we can just transfer that, just bring it down, because we can't really see what's going on. And then we've got this ridge goes back here, but all I'm going to do is put the face of the building on first. So again, a little look at the angle. And again, you know what, if we're not happy with it, we can change it. But I think it needs to start somewhere. We can just see the tops of some windows here underneath the trees, but we can't see too much. And then there's all this lovely kind of design, which I'll put on after, you know, if you want to put that, you can put it on afterwards. I just did a suggestion of it this morning. And so we've just got left there some of the, I'm just looking for a rubber in here actually, because one of the things is if you end up with loads of lines, sometimes it can be a little bit disorientating, you know, if you've got loads of lines, and so you can always rub that bit out there just so that it helps you, or leave it in. I'll just leave it in for now. And then we've just got this bit of the ridge for the tile, so it goes, the roof tile goes backwards, and that's a really steep angle. And this is, again, you know, just having a little look at all how everything leans helps us kind of work it out, because sometimes when we put it in, we might just draw it straight back like that, but actually it's leaning quite downwards quite a bit. It's very interesting, isn't it? It's really good. You know, we're doing a bit of a study really today on how these buildings work, because we're not used to drawing painting them, unless you sit and kind of draw Japanese buildings, which I don't think many of us do. It's a new thing. Any new thing we're doing just needs a little bit more kind of thinking about and working out. So yeah, so it just disappears, doesn't it? There's kind of a, down here we can see almost like the top of a bit of black area here, or a dark area where there's some kind of doorway or something, or window, but again we can only see part of it, so I'm just going to pop that in behind. Like, it doesn't even come that far out actually. It's that way. Yeah. Yeah, brought mine across too far. I'll bring it back over here. the roof goes across, but then the doorway is kind of there. And again, we can only see a bit of it, so we can just put a suggestion of it. It's just helping us to build this picture of what we can see. So that these bits here, I would say, are the more straightforward bits. So this is the bit where everybody finds it tricky. So I think we're going to go up. We're going to stack upwards rather than starting at the top. We've got a little marker and we can move that. So I'm just going to pop on some of this roof. So we had a lean there, but actually the top bit of it, where the blue section is less curved and a bit wider. So I'm going to pop that in. There's something on the end here. I don't know what that is. There we go. And then obviously we've put one line in there. But I'm just going to go and pop the top line in again, so it just gives an idea. And then we have a lot going on here. So I'm going to start from this side. This is the bit that causes people the most problem, and the only reason is that when we start building it in and blocking in the colour, it looks a very odd shape and it's very difficult to find your bearings. So what you might want to do with this is having a go at actually we're going to put in some of those end kind of walls in, just so there's some structure to it, so it doesn't kind of feel so odd. So we know if we look again at this building only, although this comes out, that the actual building part, look, doesn't come very far out, does it, from there? And there's almost like a viewing platform around it, isn't there, here? Until we, and then this top section here. So I'm going to bring, there's the bit at the bottom. So I'm going to start with this bit at the bottom that's got all this lovely, beautiful, elaborate work on it. Get that in. And then we'll look at where this ridge comes out, pokes out. It stops just there, just before that. Does it come straight down? Yeah, it does, like the other edges of the building. So we know pretty much that's going to, apart from the bits that are sticking out up here. This bottom section comes in there. Now you can go all the way up if you want to. That's what I'm going to do. Just kind of, it's kind of got more curved edge, but it's got all these lines which can be a bit confusing as well there. So we've got another platform that seems to come up here. I'm just going to pop that in. Normally don't do anything like this amount of drawing, and the only reason I'm going, as I said, I'm popping it in this time is because this section really confuses people. So we have a little bit of detail, even if we paint over it with some sections of colour, it'll just help a little bit. And then we've got this other bit of the platform here underneath the roof. So this bit looks a bit more curved. I think it's just the way that these lines are going as well. And we've got this section of the roof that's sticking out there. So we've got this section, and all I'm going to do is pop in to look at where this is. So again, what we need to look at is that straight across. I'm going to bring it down a little bit like that. So we should already have a little bit. So I'm just going to put this on make this lean. It goes down and then it leans up again, doesn't it? It gets beautiful. The roofs are just spectacular. And then we've got this end of the section. So this is the bit we need to think about here. We've got between this section and this section, again, this and this is fairly parallel. And obviously that would be normal. Having a roof and the other part of the roof should more or less be parallel, unless we're looking at a really odd angle straight up, then that will change things again. So yeah, so we've got this as parallel, like these two are parallel. And like these are parallel just because they're stacked on top of each other. So this section here, we're just thinking about, how does that come out? And I think we'll get this in place before we get that bit in, because it can be a bit, as I said, a bit confusing. So let's have a look. So this bit, we can just put a dot on as to how far up into this, into that corner of this section that it comes. And then we can look at the angle and just see, does it measure up? No? Have we done it? Is it steep enough? Mine's not, so I'm going to move it along. That's kind of why we do fact check it, because sometimes our eye plays tricks on us when we think it's going to go somewhere, it's not quite there. So, got this section of the roof, and there is a curve in it. And then it comes upwards and outwards as well. And we've got a bit of this section of the roof here, going behind it there, which then comes out here. So I'm just putting a little line, so that will be more parallel, won't it? It's just got little sections, hasn't it, where these eaves turn up. So then we've got, what we've got left here, let's have a look. What we need to be looking at is how all of this will line up. So where that top section is, we need to help it go around the corner. That sounds a really strange way of saying it, but just helping it go around the corner in the same, in the same kind of slant as this top roof. And then I think at this point, I haven't done these edges just yet, but at this point, I'm going to pop in where this triangular section is. And again, this looks, literally, they're doing that, aren't they? They literally look like they're going out. One's going this way, so this one's going this way, and this one's going that way, which is why it's quite tricky to do. So all we're doing is we're looking again at that triangle, which is it's really straight. It's almost not quite 90 degrees, is it? But it's really straight, whereas this one is kind of more like a 45-degree angle or something like that. So we've got two very odd angles there, just the way the photo is being taken. So if we get near where the edge is, not quite at the edge, goes just above the section there, and then we have a strong angle there. So again, you might need to just go back and check whereabouts it is, and it comes off like that. Then we've got just this section of the roof again here. So what we've got then, we're having a little look at what else needs to come out. So we've got some area here which looks like it's going inwards, and it comes down. And again, that tiny bit there is a bit straighter. We've got this kind of section just poking out the side, and again, that's just following the line. We could bring that all the way back. And then we have this area of the roof, which is that's almost straight. So we just need to check, have we brought that line out far enough? And it comes back inwards there. Some of this, again, we might change as we go through and we actually paint it in, so don't worry too much. We've then now starting to see a better shape there, rather than, if you can imagine if you took all of these lines out, it would look really odd, and that's what the brain really struggles with, is to see these patches of colour that there's just nothing going on. So then we're just left with this lovely roof here. Note here. So I now see that I've just got this section here, and this one at the top needs to actually come right out, which I didn't see earlier. It kind of comes up and it's got a little bit of a curve. And then we've got straight across, following the same line as this bottom bit of it, and this parallel. And then the same here, that just kind of goes, a little bit that comes out there. It's like an eave, I think. That bit of the eave there. But then obviously we've got this lovely, follows the line, this lovely curved section on the top. It follows it out, and then we've just got this very last bit to do there. So if you see, you follow that line all the way, although this has got a curve in the middle of it, this little bit, it pretty much follows the same line out, doesn't it? So I'm just looking at whereabouts that's going to come to. So I'm going to curve that down on the inside. The same there. This side is slightly straighter up because it doesn't have, just has a very mild curve there. Just going to bring it in, slight curve. Yeah. So there's lots of shapes. Basically, it's just lots of shapes, isn't it? And then we, as the artist, then we can just take that and run with it and just put all these lovely tones in. But really don't worry too much because we are going to paint. This is more mapping out than I would normally do for any building, but it's just, I know it's just helpful to have some markers, more markers rather than, I know it was quite a struggle this morning for people just to draw that shaping on its own because you can't, as I said, it's difficult to see where the walls are. So we've had a go at doing it the other way. And the rest of it, we can change and filter and move the shapes of all the different roof tiles and everything as we go. Just having something in. And it does follow. So you've got this, and it comes in, it comes in. So that's what happens, doesn't it? As with these, they kind of come across as they go. So it's really, really lovely. But I'm going to take a pause there because this is, as I said, the bit that takes, I think, the time really. And come and see how you're getting on. Okay, so if you do want to take any lines out, like when you've got that into place, if it feels like it's distracting you, then you can remove it. And if not, we'll just paint over it really. So once you've got kind of the bare structure in place, then we can actually then start to make it our own. That's the joy of doing this as well. It's like that once you get started with it, we will have use some different kind of brushes, some thinner, some thicker, etc. We can even have a little go with our fan brush as well with some of this foliage once we get that bit of the final part. Really what we're thinking about from here is all the different tones that will help us to help this building come to life really. Including, thinking about the different tones we want to use for the tops of the buildings. Also, the fact that some might be more yellowy in tone, some might be more white, just because they're in the shade or in the light, actually. You seem to get some reflections on here. So we can start building these up, really. And it's just about finding the right brush. But I'm going to go in and get my sky into place to start with, just so that I can bring it in, and then it's there. So as before, we're just thinking about what kind of blues you might like. So you can try ultramarine, you can try your phthalo blue or a Prussian blue or cerulean blue, which is a little bit more turquoisey. And again, I'm going to really encourage you to just go with the colour of sky that you mix, that you think, I'm just really enjoying that. Really like it. I like this particular sky because it's got quite a bit of depth to it. I'm going to go in with a phthalo blue. I'm going to go in with a bit of a cerulean turquoisey blue as well together, and a white as a tint. But you try any of them that you fancy. The nice thing about this is that it's typically a bit more kind of a rich sky at the top, and as it goes towards the horizon, it kind of gets lighter, which we do sometimes see quite often. So I'm just going to get some white in there. What I am going to do though is mix up a few different bands of colour, some with more white in than others, and so that they're all ready, so that they will blend once I start to do that. So I'm just going to get my little palette knife, bit of tissue to clean my palette knife off with, smooth this over here, see if I can mix something up I quite like. So again, you know, testing the colours is going to be quite important. It's really nice if you can test them because it just feels a. So I suppose I've gone in with it, probably pretty much equal parts there. Yeah, quite like that. We're just making all these decisions, aren't we, as we go through. Take a little bit from that stack. I don't really know until I actually test it which I'm going to prefer. This has got a little bit more of a cerulean colour in, which is that's really like looking at Mediterranean skies, but obviously we're in Japan here, but really slightly warmer colour. There's more warmth to the blue. I'm just adding some more white to it. I'm just doing a little bit at a time. I'm going to test those two colours with a small. I've actually got two things of water as well, so that's quite handy if you've got one, because we're going to be doing warm colours. So if you've got one that you can use for blues and one that you can use for warm colours, it just stops you having to keep getting up every 2 minutes and changing your water. I've got my little bit of tester there. I'm just testing some different colours to see if I prefer one over the other. Oh yeah, I like that second one. But I think I'm going to use this one a little bit for the top anyway. So, and I might even have an even lighter version of this one here that I've just mixed. So I'm going to take a small section of that from right at the bottom of the paper. Other blue on there. Just to mix up the very bottom to make it really light. So this kind of, you know, so it transitions from one tone to another as we go through, but just having them all ready, that when they go on, they'll just blend beautifully. A little bit more white in that one because it's not actually too different to the other one at the moment. There we go. Yeah, it's just lovely, isn't it, to experiment with skies, because skies are just so really influence how you feel actually. So you want to get the things in there that you think, oh yeah, really liking that a lot. So I've got 1, 2, 3. So I'm gonna have a little bit of this at the top. So obviously then it's thinking about having a brush that you can get it on nicer with. So a nice big like round or a nice big flat brush to get in, you know, to get across there and blend it, or a big round brush that you can just kind of move backwards and forwards on its side a little bit works as well. I'm just going to go in with this, just put some water in because I want it to be quite buttery and move really easy, and I'm going to put plenty on as well so that I can move that paint about. I'm going to go in with just bring a bit more of this really colour. Just going at the top. Yeah. And then I'm going to add a bit of water to the other one. Onto that as well. I can actually use my palette knife, but I quite enjoy mixing the water in like this. So yes, you want it nice and buttery, so it's thin enough that it kind of moves around on the canvas really well, but not so thin that it's running down. That makes it a bit more difficult for you to put on. And we can put plenty of paint on the brush. So I know if I'm putting plenty on, it will blend really nicely. Because I can move that paint backwards and forwards. Now, as I said, you could have put that on underneath, but I decided not to. Just because it's a fairly solid structure. And actually, to be honest, we do end up changing some of the lines as it goes anyway, and moving a bit over the top of some sky or moving some sky back behind it. So it doesn't really matter. Get this darker one at the top here. You can go backwards and forwards with it, or you can just kind of like create a little bit of movement. I'm just changing colours now. So if you do want some movement in your sky, you don't want it completely blended, then by all means, load it up, get a little bit of, get that sky moving a little bit in there. That's the other thing. Like when we're doing blended skies, we sometimes forget we can do that. Get a little bit of movement in there. And then I'm just adding in those other colours, so I'm going a bit lighter. I'll just wash my brush so it's not getting too dark. So you can probably see with mine, I'm not really blending. I'm getting a bit more movement in there because I want to kind of make this painting actually a little bit more artisan when I start to get the buildings in. I'm almost, personally for me, I'm almost going to be taking out some of those really kind of straight lines actually, making them a bit looser. But by all means, you can keep them really tight. So I'm just bringing that really light colour all the way down. Now, what you can do is I probably would get, if I want to get a little bit of blending, I'm just going to make some little circular motions with just with a round brush here, just to kind of get those two different, get some sections moving in. Oh, it's nice and light over here. Feels even lighter actually. You do it even with a flat brush, kind of push it round. And I'm bringing it right down as though it's going behind the trees, because actually, if you look here, over this side, just in the corner, there's a possibility that it is just a bit sky. Obviously, we've got the building behind here. It does stop there, doesn't it? And then again there, so I've got quite a big patch of it here. I'm just going to twirl it around a bit so it blends in. It's all still wet and we've got plenty of paint on there doing that. And then I may just bring in some really light colour here. This section where it's kind of almost quite bright when it comes through there. Now, if you've got too much paint on and it starts to kind of come off, then just leave it and you can do that over the top. Just with a thinner wash. It's nice to have just a little bit of change in the skyline as well. Push that around a bit. There we go. So one of the biggest things here when we're doing this is just to make sure that your brushes are really clean if you're going to use them for any warm colours. I think this next bit actually is really good fun because you can really start to kind of like, especially if you've got an eye for detail and you really like the detail of things, you can kind of get in there and really like zone in on the colours. So, we tend to go backwards to the front with acrylics and build up the layers. So an easy way of doing it actually is if you work top down, then everything that's overlapped, the next one and the next one, the next one will just naturally occur. So if we started kind of at the top. So just like looking, isn't it, which is the first bit to put on, which you want to do. So we're just looking at different tones for all these areas. So totally go with it. If you fancy putting in a dot of something really bright, for example, then just do that, there's no kind of limits on what you put in. And then I would be, thinking about, you've got things like things on the blue scale. There's Payne's grey, which is a bit of a kind of a grey colour, bluey grey. You could use violet colours. You can use, you could actually, if you wanted to, if there's anywhere that is black on here, you can use black on there as well. I tend to just say don't use black for the landscape because it can make it quite flat. But anything man-made, it tends to be where if we do use a black paint, that's where it tends to be. But I'm using Payne's grey, which isn't quite as dark as black. I'm using a flat brush still, actually, personally, that's what I fancy doing. But I'm just going to kind of get some of these bits where the roof tile comes in. Add a bit of white into there. It gives it a bit of a more muted blue. And I'm going to pop, where you're looking, I'm just going to pop something down as a base colour, and I'm just using the edge of my brush to bring it down. Now, people worry about this, say, oh, it's not really, it's not as neat as it could be. Well, the only way you can do that is going with a really fine brush. But I'm just going to kind of keep mine, as I said, painterly, because I want it to still feel like an artist picture, and my personal style isn't really precise. So if you really enjoy the preciseness, then by all means go for the preciseness, because that's the joy for a lot of people who really like to do that. And it develops your style. If you think, oh, I'm loving doing that, like making it really neat and tidy or whatever, then by all means do that. And then I'm just going to go in and top up some of these eaves with a nice bright colour on the top. We're just picking out kind of tones, really, aren't we, and things like that. And then I'm just going to work my way down, really. And another one there. So I'm literally just making a series of little marks for those bits at the top. But again, you can put as much time and things into them as you want, or as little. Great for focusing though. Just get really, really drawn into that. So I'm going to get some of this side building. So you can use like a titanium or a bit of grey colour and build up so you get the very, very brightest of white, or you can just go in with the white. It's up to you. Or you could use like what we call kind of like a buff titanium, where it's not quite white. Put a tiny bit of that in, but just experiment with all of those colours. So I've got a few on my palette here, and I'm just going to they're all still similar tone here. I'm just going to make sure I do have all of the water and paint out the base of the brush, because that can muddy things up a bit. So I'm thinking I'm going to experiment with a little bit of white. And I think this top bit, I think I might use buff over here. It's a bit warmer, but here I'm going to put a tiny bit of green, I think, and see what happens. Because it's not the brightest of white. As we come down, it gets a bit brighter. So I'm going to just make that a titchy bit grey, just so there's a slight difference in the tone, because seems to be a bit more in the distance, that top bit. And again, just enjoy, kind of popping out. And this is what I was saying, you can just use the edge of your brush to pull it down. create kind of that upturn as well, that we get that little bit of an upturn, don't we, here in the corner. There we go. And then, you know, start to pop in anything else you've got on. Like, you've got a couple of nice windows. I'm just going to go straight in with grey. Now, you know, again, I'm not going to go and draw in those. I'm just kind of going to move my brush around and drag down to kind of create a little bit of a shape of a suggestion of a window, just because that's how I work. So I've just kind of flattened my brush about a bit at the top and then pulled it down really for the windows. And then there's this darker area on the bottom over here, which is, I'm going to go with Payne's Grey for that. Quite dark, quite bluey. And all the way across. So I'm really like just making I'd say a series of marks really, what I'm doing. And it doesn't matter if it goes on the next bit, it doesn't matter, because as it dries, we can go over it again with the other colour. So don't worry if you splodge a bit and you think, oh, I'm not sure. You know, it will just come off. You can get it off. Oh, yeah. And if you know, if it's dry enough, I mean, obviously down the side here, we are getting some kind of the effect of the roof underneath, aren't we, with the panels of the wood. So, you know, just choose a slightly lighter colour if you want to do that, or just kind of represent it lightly, that you know that there is a roof there. You can see mine's kind of gone out a little bit further than I wanted to. So I'm just going to get some more of my sky colours and just bring that shape back in again. It's really easy to do with acrylics. Then if there's any other spots on there, I mean, obviously there's a few little those beautiful ornate markings, isn't there? But again, you know, you can do those as detailed or as not as detailed as you want. So I'm going to go in with a yellow colour, I think, like a warmish yellow, but you can even put a bit of orange or red on there. Kind of pulls out the colour, doesn't it, as well? I'm going to use a lot of these yellows as we go. So I would tend to do like just have some orangey colour as well, I think. I'm just going to get this on the tip. So I'm going to have the suggestion that there's something going on with these. I'm just going to put, literally just put a few things that look like patterns. So as it builds up throughout, you know, there'll be a few more of them. And then I'm going to go in again with just a few kind of splodges on the top. So I might have to wait till that's dry before I can do a bit more, but we'll see how it goes on. So I'm just making marks, really. On the tops here is where I think things go, and I'll just put a little bit, if I can see something a slightly darker colour, I'll, like the orange bit, I'll pop that in as well. So yeah, it's not, can't totally tell what this is going to be. But we can just pop in just a touch of another colour. So that does help. And then we can just keep building up, keep moving down with our layers. Whatever colour we've chosen. Just if we're flipping about, just making sure we're not putting it into the warmer colour. So I've just gone in with a bit of buff titanium under here, but you could just choose a little bit of titanium with a bit of orange or a bit of yellow or something. Do that as well. I'm just going to follow the curve. So what I do want to make sure I've got is the sense of the shape of the building, like the curved eaves and everything. Because that's the bit, isn't it? The essence of the things that one of the little things that stands out. In the Japanese buildings. And then, you might have some quite, sometimes what happens is if you want it a bit more defined, you might go in with a little bit more of a shadow in there and create that. The shadow line is really helpful for creating some definition. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Yeah. So I like little bits like this are quite handy to take, just some of these sections. So I'm going to go in like dark at the top, and then I'll pop that sort of just a few suggestions, like we call it like gestural lines, just some suggestion rather than drawing it all of them in. But again, if you love that and that's your joy, then go for it. Pop more in if you want to. It's nice to get lost in all of the shapes, tones. So it can help, it helps a bit to just bring in a few different tones whilst you're doing this. And then you can get those kind of lines in over the top. So I'm going to go for just a slightly brighter blue in the middle section with there. Bring in some of this Phthalo actually. A tiny bit of just helps kind of work out where all these sections are, because we can get a bit lost in where it is. Just keeps it, you know, helps with the angles a bit as well. If I'm following this down. And then I've got a very dark section underneath again, so I'm back in with my Payne's grey. And we're just, you know, we're creating the base to build on with our colours. So it's going to look a little bit unfinished at the moment because we haven't kind of built up those layers, but we'll soon will. Getting those in place. Like that. And it does feel like it's losing its shape when we're doing this, but we'll put it back, so don't worry. Once we put the lighter areas and things like that in, it'll be okay. Sometimes we go, oh no, I've lost where the edge is. It's okay. Those lines, you know, these linear lines in a way will do that for us. There we go. I realise I've left a bit of sky out. Go back and pop that in. And you can always use your sky, as I said. Sky is a great thing. You've not quite got the shape right. You just go kind of move things in a little bit. Up there, and then put a bit there. Move that bit in. Okay. So before I put this bit of roof on, because this is coming behind, I'll just go in with a bit of this kind of light colour. And I'm not going to go with white with these lines because I don't want a really sharp contrast. I'm going to go in with probably, I might actually use a bit of ultramarine blue this time and just use a tiny bit of tint. I'm going to, oh crikey, it's got all over my fingers today. There we go. So I'm just going to take a bit of this ultramarine blue mix it with some white. Hopefully, see if that works against the colour. So I want plenty mixed up, and I also need it thin enough that it's going to spread quite easily as well. So that's quite a nice colour. I don't want to go too like that. So I'm just, the beauty of acrylic is you can put a thinner layer over a thicker layer. You just need plenty so it really glides on the right on the tip. And again, like I was saying, you don't have to put everything in. I'm going to make mine a bit painterly, so I'm just going to put some of this structure back in here. It's starting a bit underneath there, look. And I'm just going to keep bringing it up because mine's quite wet under there. Just kind of a suggestion that we've got you can use a rigger brush as well, a really long thin one if you want to. Wanting to be really precise with it. I'm going to keep mine a little bit looser and not worry too much. I've got a few little splodges in there. And then, you know, we can just kind of put a suggestion if there's some kind of a platform there. There we go. And that's as much as I will do really on that side anyway. And then it is brighter in the middle there, so I'm going to get a bit more in there. And it's one of those things where you're just building it up as you go and you don't really know how much you want to put on until you do it. What I am doing is kind of being mindful to kind of mark the edge there by popping a bit of light where it catches, just so it just puts a bit of structure back into that shape that we've got. I'll put some yellow over this in the moment anyway, where this is. So again, I'm going to load plenty up on my brush, and as I said, it might be that you have to wait until it's a bit drier. And then I'm just following which kind of angle I can see these lines going down. So you might need to just go back and think, okay, is it straight up? No, it's leaning with this, but it does come back to the middle. So yeah, I just only really like this. You can put that in as well. Very absorbing there. It's lovely. So I might just pick out a couple of the bits I think actually I'm going to really lighten that particular area, just to give it a little bit of a pop. In a couple of places. It seems to be a bit kind of a bit more light over here. Yeah, it seems to be a bit light a bit there. So yeah, depending on how, you know, sometimes you need to get it right on the tip of your brush to kind of get that effect. But I'm just dragging mine down. I don't want a really straight line because it'll make it very, very angular. I've kept mine a little bit looser. These are kind of the final highlights that we would, if we were going to put on it, if you wanted to, and then might out a little bit that's just that bit bright, and just pop it on so it pops out a little. And likewise, if there's any shadow you want to put back in as well, that's the other time to do it. So I'm just going to pop in a few of these lighter areas, these kind of rooftop areas before I pop on any decoration. And this is, like I said, this is a bit more splodgy, but I'll just neaten it up with the darker one underneath it, so I'm not worried too much. And then I'll go in with some of these decorations afterwards. But even there, even on the roof here, you might have a little bit that's slightly lighter blue or whatever that you want to put in as well, where the light's catching that. So that's a good opportunity to look at the different tones in there that you've got. If you find your brush is getting a bit like thick, just give it a really good rinse off, because it can get clogged, and it makes the brush, kind of really like fluff out, so you lose the shape to be able to do paint with it. You can also turn your board round and things as well if you want to. If you're finding it difficult to work at the angle that you're at. So where you get this kind of it's almost a bit of a stripy effect. I quite like that. Just to actually try and recreate that just by making a bit of a stripy effect on there. Put some not bright blue on the bottom of it in between. And then we've got some more of these kind of blues and things. All these other tones, whatever colour you choose. It then starts, the more you do on it, the more you think, oh yeah, I can start to see it now. Let that turn up as well. These edges to turn up. Definitely work in progress. You just keep flicking back between the tones that you want. And remember, you can always pull another darker line over a lighter one, or a lighter one over a darker one if you wanting to change it slightly. And then it just little by little, it just starts really coming together. And you start to see the shapes and things like that. Little bits coming out the side and things like that. And things like all beautiful ornate work on there. You can actually like try and recreate it, or you can recreate what I because I don't want to go into so much detail with it. I'm tending to just pick a few shapes and recreate it across there so that you can tell there's some kind of a pattern to it, but I'm not actually putting in exactly what it is. That makes sense. So that's the other way of doing it, another way of doing it really, where you're not wanting to pop into exactly what you can see, but you want something in there. You're not sure. So you get really, really pulled into that lovely, everything's going on in there as we're working down. And then, if you want to put I'm just going to put shapes of the animal here. Without actually putting what it is. And these shapes on the top as well. When we've got the background areas in, we can kind of pull that down and do that. And then we're on to the next bit, aren't we? And have a little look at recreating, and we're layering it up, so it just makes it a bit of an easier process. I'm going to take a pause there, just see how you're all getting on. Okay, so we'll just carry on coming through. So if you want to take a break with some of it and do some foliage, that's fine. I'm just going to pop in the bits that overlap here. And you can always put like the base colours in and then come back and put the detail in if you want to, or you can just work through it like a process, work through it. So what I am being mindful of now is some of these yellows are a bit brighter than these whites over here. So where it's a bit more yellowy, I'll just make a tint with a bit of yellow in it. Just shows like one side's got a bit of a warmer face than the other one. That's all it does. Put that in there. I'm just doing all this space here a bit warmer. And then obviously I can't really see what's going on too much. This is what I was saying. I would just put a few little colours going in behind, even though I can't really see what's going on there. And I'll go lighter over this side. But I'm just working on this section. I'm just kind of building in. And working my way through it. It's just being able to kind of create something in there that gives a sense of where the edges of this wall is as well. But you can pop like a bit of a broken shadow line in as well. That sometimes helps kind of create the shape of it. It gets more tricky because we can't, like we were saying, we can't really see what's going on down there. We just know that the foliage is going to cover it, so we just need a bit of that colour coming in behind. So it's kind of almost like an eave of a roof or something there. So I'm popping something that looks a bit like that, but not worry too much about it. So I'll almost put it in really loosely down here that, yeah, there's something there, but we're not sure what exactly. And same in here, just underneath it. So yeah, we don't need to finish anything really in there. And then we're just happily blocking out, getting all these other things in. It's quite much getting brighter on this section here, so I'm going to pop that in as Mhm. Just think about, what colour you can pop in for the windows and that kind of thing as well. But again, we can only really see the tops and the tops of them under the foliage. Not a lot to see. I'm just popping in a suggestion that they're there now. Yeah, I think I will go in some foliage too, just so we can get some demonstration on that. So I'm aware that time goes really fast, doesn't it? So I'm just going to go in, have a little look at the colours right behind. So in some sections it might be green, some sections behind it might be orange, some it might be yellow. But just go in with all these lovely autumnal colours, and you can just kind of build them up beautifully. Just really enjoy them. And some of it might be kind of like what I'd call a burnt sienna or a Venetian red kind of colour. It's like a bit more burnt shades. So we can only just have a little go at what we can see, and you can build that up and bring that over. And then if there's any extra touches we want to do to the buildings, you can do that afterwards. There we go. Get this beautiful autumn in place. Because we're going to warmer colours now, make sure you've got a nice clean brush. I'm going in with just kind of quite a decent size one because I quite like to kind of really layer it on. And you can just dab it if you want, build it up that way. Just kind of dabbing it on. And if your brush is kind of big enough, it will cover it really well. And it starts putting in a little bit of structure as well whilst you're doing it. So I'm going in with a dark browny reddy down at the bottom here. You can see quite a lot of shadow behind. There, in between the reds and everything as well. We tend to get that anyway, where there's some depth, where there's, where you get the depth at the bottom of the trees, underneath and things like that. I'm just going to get that in underneath, to layer on top of. I'm going to go in with this section here, and then there's all this section up here. So you can take each section independently if you want to. Got some nice kind of yellowy oranges coming behind there. So I'm going to mix. You can also put two on your brush and get that kind of contrasting feel through. Just make sure your blues are dry though behind, otherwise you'll end up with a bit of a mix. Could be green sky rather than blue. So we can add on like some real brights on the top anyway, once we've got the patches and things are going through and weaved through. But yeah, it's working out which comes first is the key. Sometimes it's quite difficult, multi-layers on there, try difficult to work out exactly what, like this obviously is coming up over the top of this yellow, but it's got the yellow coming through underneath. You can go in with warm yellows, or you can go in with bright yellows. Put plenty on your brush as well. And then through all this kind of real background colour, you've got some of these lovely branches, and I'll kind of get plenty on my nice thin brush that you want to branches, and really have it just, if you can keep it nice and loose, just by holding your paintbrush a bit further down rather than right up there, it just kind of behaves a little bit more loosely. Just kind of popping them through, crisscrosses, keep topping up with paint so it moves easily. See what's coming down. If you're wanting a really dark brown, just go in with a bit of dark blue or something as well. You can see that's a bit darker over these really dark spots down here. They all kind of crisscross, don't they? And that's just a mixture of blue, dark blue and brown. And then we can use those, branches to kind of build up the paint coming over and sideways, and kind of follow the line of the branch to build up the foliage. It's really helpful. Over the top of the green there, so build over that. And it doesn't have to be, exact, because we're just kind of choosing the bits that we want as our artist impression and filtering out the bits that we don't want as well, actually. Or sometimes adding in extra bits that weren't there as well. So yeah, so each time you do it, then you can go in with a separate layer. So I'm going to go in with my reds now. You know, and it's just testing the tones, you know, how bright a red do you want, or do you want more of an orangey red, or is it a more of a pinky red? Just having a little go. So you can go in with you know, just an ordinary brush like that, or you can try your fan brush. Just put a little bit on the edge. And it's good to have it so it's all splayed out as well. And you can just kind of start to tap on over the top. Plenty of paint though, you know, paint on, you know, some of this foliage that goes over the top, and just explore that, you know, how that goes on, how it feels. Do you like the brush or not? And just experiment a little bit with brushes you maybe wouldn't normally use. Quite interesting. Yeah, you can see what happens if you have more. Put another tone of colour in there. All to have a go at. Again, you might just have to check that things have dried out a little bit underneath with your brown branches and things first as well. Otherwise, that can get a bit of a muddy mess. Be careful there. But it's all to play and experiment with, isn't it, really? Having fun, having a go. Loading it up over the tops of the other colours. And experimenting with colours of the foliage as well. Really interesting, isn't it? You start building up all these beautiful colours. Yeah, with the fan brush as well, it's like working out how do I get it to move in a direction that I want? All these kinds of questions. And the answer is it's just through experimenting and having a go with it, really. Um, I tend to just use one edge of it as opposed to the whole thing. But you know, don't be frightened of going in with those nice brights. And it might mean, as I said, you know, just let it dry a little bit because I know mine's becoming a bit muddy here, so that it's drying, and then you can just try a bit more. But you can even soften down each of those edges that you've tried already with the fan brush again. It's really interesting how you can use that. So yeah, bring it up as much as you want over the building. And the difference is when once you start to get this in, it makes such a difference. Um, and it to how soft the feel of the composition is. Where at the beginning, it just felt really hard and angular. It's amazing what this foliage will do to the painting itself. Something very small amount of yellow back in the side. And then I'm going to stop, I think. It's just been very really used our brains a lot, which is good. But just to try all these different little effects is lovely. Even if something's a little bit harder than we expect it to be, it's still great, isn't it, to have a try and work out how things go and everything. So yeah, so just work out with the contrast as well, because obviously to be able to see one colour, you need to be able to have a contrast between either a darker one or another colour alongside it. So that's interesting as well. So I've got different effects for different. I've used my fan brush a bit, but I'm also going to use this brush as well to give a different effect for some different foliage. So it might be, you think, oh, I've taken out all of the uh, branches. Well, you can always pop a few back in if you want to, just to create a little bit more definition. Or you might not want to. You might think, I love it when I've got nearly all foliage and less branch or whatever. It's all to kind of test and experiment, isn't it, really? See what your preferences are. That's what it's all about, working out what it is you really like and what you're not so sure about. Well, I'm going to stop there and take a final pause, see how you're getting on, and a big well done for this session, because I know there's a lot to think about. So well done for persevering.